Did you know? In a museum case in Oxford sits a clay prism, a list of kings that claims rulers once reigned for tens of thousands of years. Did ancient humans really have reigns of 28,800? 36,000, even 43,200 years? Or does this tablet hide a different story, one of sky gods, lost knowledge, and visitors from above? The Sumerian King List is an ancient catalogue of rulers, city by city, from the earliest, mythical days right up through historical Mesopotamia. The most famous copy is the Weld-Blundell Prism, preserved at the Ashmolean Museum, which preserves the long sequence in 4 columns of cuneiform script. The list opens with, kingship descending from heaven, and then the reign lengths explode. The earliest rulers are credited with lifespans counted not in decades, but in tens of thousands of years. These figures use Sumerian numeric units, sars, nas and sasas, multiples in a base 60 system. When read literally they become enormous regnal totals. Scholars note that these early numbers belong to a very different genre, myth and symbolic numerology. Experts treat the King List as a strange hybrid, part myth, part memory, part political statement. After the antediluvian kings, the reigns shrink into believable ranges. The list interleaves legendary names and verifiable rulers. It's a document that tells us how ancient Mesopotamians themselves understood kingship. So the King List is real, but are the earliest figures literal history? Most mainstream scholars say no, the numbers are symbolic, that kings before the flood belonged to mythic time. Sumerian literature also speaks of powerful beings who walked between heaven and earth, the Anunnaki. In many texts they are divine adjudicators of fate, born of the sky god and earth goddess Ki. Over centuries their roles and reputations shift across myths and administrative records. Ancient astronaut theorists point to these passages and ask, what if the Anunnaki were not gods in the mythic sense, but beings of extraordinary technology, visitors whose presence got written down as divine rulership? Zecharia Sitchin, a name familiar to anyone in ancient astronaut circles, argued that Sumerian texts describe extraterrestrials from a planet called Nibiru who came to Earth to mine resources and engineered humanity. Sitchin based much of his argument on readings of Sumerian terms and ancient epics. But Sitchin's work is controversial. Translators and Assyriologists say his readings are incorrect or speculative, key words and grammar were mistranslated, and his planetary claims are not supported by mainstream cuneiform scholarship. That doesn't stop the question from being riveting. If a people recorded kings who came from heaven, whether gods, exalted rulers, or visitors, what was the cultural memory they were trying to preserve? There are several sober ways to read this text: symbolic numerology using the sexagesimal system, ritual or priestly exaggeration that legitimized later rulers by stitching them to a mythic past, or the possibility of lost calendrical systems that measured time differently. Scholars also note political motive. By giving a distant past a chain of royal legitimacy, later dynasties anchored themselves in sacred history. That's the human tendency, we build stories that explain why rulers rule. So what do we have? A real, ancient artifact that records kingship as a sky-descended gift, staggering numbers that belong to mythic time, and a persistent question that refuses to go away: are these the echoes of lost civilizations, or the memories of extraordinary visitors from above?